Gregor Samsa was a quiet man, always on time, always exhausted, a traveling salesman. He lived not for himself, but for his family. His father had debts, his mother was ill, and his sister still dreamt of music lessons. So Gregor worked day in and day out, sleeping in trains, waking in strange towns, returning home only to collapse into uneasy dreams. One such morning, Gregor opened his eyes and knew something was wrong. His back was hard and curved. His legs were many and thin, twitching without control. He had turned somehow into an insect. But his first thought wasn't terror, it was guilt. I'm late for work. From behind the locked door, his family called out, confused by his silence. His manager arrived, questioning his absence. Gregor tried to reply, but only strange noises came. When he finally opened the door, they recoiled. His mother fainted. His father's eyes, cold with fear and shame, drove him back into the room with a stick. Days passed. Gregor hid beneath the sofa. His sister Gret fed him scraps. He stopped eating. The apartment grew quieter around him, yet the walls pressed closer. The family took on jobs. Gregor became a secret, a burden, an unspoken sadness. Even Gret, once tender, began to resent him. One day, she and their mother entered his room and to remove the furniture, to give him space. They said, but Gregor knew. They were stripping away his past, his human traces. He clung to the framed picture on the wall, a woman in furs, the last remnant of the man he had been. Later, his father returned. Seeing Gregor exposed, he grew furious. Apples were hurled, one embedded in Gregor's back, festering, rotting. No doctor came. Days blurred, the family, desperate for income, rented out a room to three stiff-lipped boarders. Gregor stayed hidden, but one evening, hearing his sister play the violin, something stirred in him, something that still remembered beauty. He crept out. The boarders screamed. Gret wept, not out of sympathy, but disgust. That thing is not Gregor anymore, she whispered. Gregor heard her. That night, alone in the dust of his room, he stopped moving. Not out of choice, but quiet release. He was never truly seen, only used. And now, no longer useful, he disappeared. The cleaning women found his body. She swept it up like rubbish. The next morning, the family took a walk. The sun was warm. Gret stretched her limbs. She is grown strong, her parents remarked. The city was wide, and their future suddenly felt light. Gregor's name was not spoken again. The Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, which became a cornerstone of 20th century literature, influenced existentialists, inspired artists, filmmakers, and playwrights, and it continues to be studied for its psychological depth, symbolic richness, and universal resonance. It's more than a story about a man who becomes a bug. It's a chilling meditation on what it means to be human, how society measures worth, and how identity collapses under external expectations. It captures the silent tragedy of being unseen, unheard, and unloved, not because one has changed, but because one no longer serves a function. Gregor Samsa's metamorphosis is physical, but the real transformation occurs in the people around him and in us, the readers, as we confront the uncomfortable truth of how easily humanity can be revoked. Franz Kafka was a German-speaking Bohemian writer born in Prague. He is considered one of the most influential literary figures of the 20th century. Though most of his works was published posthumously, Kafka's writings explore themes of alienation, existential dread, bureaucratic absurdity, and the struggle of individual against incomprehensible systems. Kafka's world is haunting and surreal, one where individuals are trapped in invincible mazes of law, guilt, and metaphysical uncertainty. His name has become an adjective, Kafkaesque, used to describe situations that are complex, illogical, and oppressive. He remains an enigma, both as a man and a writer. His works confront the individual with terrifying beauty of modern existence, where clarity is elusive, guilt is inherited, and salvation is a mirage. Through haunting metaphors and stark prose, Kafka gives voice to the inarticulate fears of the world, adrift in reason and devoid of comfort. In reading Kafka, one does not merely understand despair or absurdity, one inhabits it, and in doing so, finds a strange kind of clarity. In Metamorphosis, he explores alienation and isolation. Gregor becomes physically isolated due to his form, but the deeper tragedy is emotional isolation. Kafka reflects the modern condition where individuals feel cut off from others, even within their own families. It explores dehumanization. Gregor's physical metamorphosis is a metaphor of how people are reduced to functions, especially in modern capitalist systems. When he can no longer earn money, he loses his worth. It explores absurdity of existence. Kafka sees the irrationality and indifference of life. There is no explanation for Gregor's transformation and no redemption or justice at the end. It explores family duty and burden. Kafka critiques the suffocating expectations placed upon individual. Gregor lives not for himself but to serve his family. Ironically, once he is gone, they flourish. It also explores loss of identity. Gregor's internal monologue remains rational, but his external form serves from the human world. His identity erodes as he loses language, agency, and connection, all of which together create a haunting allegory of modern life, where love is conditional, worth is economic, and humanity is fragile, always under the threat of being revoked. The story is a haunting indictment of conditional love and utilitarian relationships. Kafka presents a universe devoid of transcendence, one where the individual is trapped in an absurd order, governed not by morality or meaning, but by opaque systems, silent judgments, and decaying empathy. There is no catharsis, no redemption, no grand tragedy, only the slow erosion of humanity in a house where love quietly dies. Gregor's death is not a dramatic climax, but a philosophical silence, the final vanishing of a self who was never truly seen. In the end, the Metamorphosis is a meditation on the ephemeral nature of identity, the fragility of human worth, and the chilling normalcy of existential abandonment. So, what do you think? I mean, how can a man be so pessimistic about everything? To say Kafka was pessimistic is not wrong, but it's incomplete. Kafka wasn't simply negative about life, he was radically honest about the absurdity, anxiety, and the alienation that often go unspoken beneath the surface of modern existence. He was caught between identities, obligations, and disappointments. His writings demand compassion, awareness, and courage. So, why does he seem so dark? Because he never lied to himself about how fragile human dignity is. And yet, despite it all, he wrote that itself is a kind of hope, and someone crushed under weight still chooses to shape suffering into art. That's not pessimism actually, it's endurance. He was breaking quietly, and still he wrote. Kafka didn't write to be saved. He wrote because he could not stay silent. Every line was a breath under the weight of being. And somehow, in his darkness, I find a strange kind of light. So, what is Kafka telling us? That worth is not always productivity. That love, if real, survives even when usefulness ends, that we must see the invisible, hear the voiceless, and hold space for those who can no longer carry us. So let me leave you with the emotional and philosophical core of Metamorphosis. When love is weighed on a scale of need, it breaks the moment you cease to feed. A soul that bends for every cry may one day vanish and none ask why. To serve too long without a name is to burn in silence, not in flame. And those who turn from pain they see forget how human they claim to be. He spoke no words, yet felt so much. But hearts grow cold where hands lose touch. So judge not those who change their form, for even monsters were once warm. He gave his life in silent grace, a nameless cure in duty's place. But love that leans on what we give will break when we forget to live.